Imagine this. You've been promised a raise at work. Not just you, but every single one of your coworkers. But months go by and nothing. Every time you ask your boss, he brushes you off with that same smug smile. Now imagine turning the tables so hard that your boss has to drive hours back from his lakefront vacation just to personally apologize to you. That's exactly what happened in today's story. If you ever dreamed of serving justice to a boss who thought they could walk all over you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and get comfortable, because this is one of the most satisfying workplace revenge stories you'll ever hear. Back in the early 2000s, I was working for a big Canadian telecom company. To set the scene, this wasn't just some mom-and-pop phone store. This was a massive company, one that had recently merged East and West, swallowing up competitors and spreading its corporate wings across the country. In December, corporate announced something huge. Service reps like me were getting raises, up to $3.50 more per hour. That was real money back then. For many of us, it meant paying bills a little easier, saving for something special, or just not sweating every single grocery trip. But here's the kicker. Corporate didn't just give the raises. They handed the responsibility down to the area managers. And that's where my story begins, with one particular manager who saw this as an opportunity, not for us, but for himself. Now let me tell you about this man. He managed 7 or 8 stores in our area. On the surface, he had the polished corporate vibe, sharp suits, slick words, always bragging about his fancy Muskoka cottage. But underneath, he was the kind of guy who'd squeeze every drop out of his employees if it meant padding his own wallet. I didn't realize it at first. I thought, okay, it might take a few weeks to process the raises. Paperwork, logistics, fine. But weeks turned into months. February rolled around. Nothing. March came. Still nothing. By May, 4 months had gone by. Every time I asked, his response was the same lazy smirk and one word: soon. At first, I thought I was being impatient, but then I started talking to employees in other areas. Turns out, stores outside our district had already received their raises, some as early as February. That's when it hit me like a punch in the gut. This man was deliberately delaying. Why? Because his quarterly bonuses depended on keeping labor costs low. The longer he held off, the bigger his bonus. In other words, he was stealing from us, from me, from my co-workers. And the smug way he brushed me off every time I asked, that was gasoline on the fire. I wasn't just frustrated anymore. I felt disrespected, dismissed, powerless. And that sense of being powerless, that's the part that eats at you. By May, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat down and poured everything into a 4-page letter. Every detail, every time I'd asked, every time he brushed me off, every date, every conversation. I made it a bulletproof document, one that corporate couldn't ignore. But I didn't send it right away. Oh no, timing was everything. You see, this man loved to brag about his cottage in Muskoka. He talked about it constantly, like owning waterfront property made him royalty. That May-long weekend, he strutted into the store, talking about how he'd be leaving around noon to head up there with his family. That's when the plan clicked into place. At noon, he left for his big weekend getaway. By 4 p.m., I sat down at my computer, pulled up my email, and attached my 4-page letter. Then, with one satisfying click, I sent it directly to the president and CEO of the entire company. I didn't CC my manager. I didn't CC his boss. I went nuclear, straight to the very top. And then I went home and slept like a baby. Now, I expected my manager to come back from his weekend to a storm of angry emails. Maybe his Monday would be ruined. That was the plan. What I didn't expect was what happened next. Saturday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, I show up to work. And guess who's waiting for me in the parking lot? Yep, my area manager. He had been forced to drive back from Muskoka, hours on the road, to stand there red-faced and seething. He looked like he wanted to strangle me, but he couldn't. Not this time. His words? Everyone in your area will get their raises, retroactive to January 1st. And everyone at your store is getting the maximum raise. I just stood there, calm, almost smug. He had lost. He tried to guilt me. He said, "You ruined my weekend. You should have spoken to me first." And oh, that was sweet, because I had the receipts. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I'd be glad to forward you the email I sent to CO. It documents every single date and time I asked you about this, and every time you blew me off." I didn't stop there. I told him he'd been stealing from me by delaying my raise, that if he lost his bonus and his weekend sucked, that was justice. At that point, I owned the conversation. I ended it on my terms. I said, "There's nothing more to discuss. I'm going into the store. Have a great drive back to Muskoka. I hear the scenery is beautiful." And then I walked away, leaving him fuming in the parking lot. I wasn't worried about retaliation. I was already planning to leave within 6 to 8 months for my real career. This was my mic drop moment. The best part? I got calls from employees at other stores, thanking me. Word spread quickly, and I made sure to share the story openly. Nobody told me to keep quiet. In the end, I didn't just get justice for myself. I got justice for every single employee in our area. And my manager, he got exactly what he deserved. A ruined weekend, a lost bonus, and the humiliation of being dragged back from his perfect little cottage to apologize to the very employee he tried to cheat. That moment in the parking lot, seeing his face, red with anger, but knowing he couldn't touch me, that was better than any raise. That was vindication. It was proof that sometimes the little guy can flip the script. And the best part? Every single co-worker in my area got their raise backdated to January. Justice wasn't just served, it was retroactive. Sometimes in life, you only get one shot at putting someone in their place. And when that moment comes, you have to be ready. For me, it wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect. About not letting someone walk all over me. And that, my friends, was worth every second. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or pulled off yourself? And of course, subscribe for more stories like this. Because trust me, the best revenge stories are the ones you least expect.